welcome back to Just One Question. And it's always a treat to have one of my fellow tillers in the vineyard of communications on the show. And our next guest, Michelle Gladieux, is exactly that. She is an educator, an executive coach, an instructional designer, which sounds really cool. I wish I was one of those, and an author based in Indiana. Michelle, welcome. How the heck are you?
I'm doing so well, and I've really enjoyed listening to your podcast, so I'm thrilled to be here.
Why, thank you. It's wonderful to have you. And so let's just jump right into it. What are you excited about these days?
I am excited about getting to interact with audiences of all sizes lately in book workshops.
Oh,
My book is Communicate with Courage, and the subtitle is Taking Risks to Overcome the Four Hidden Challenges. So, in building this book over a number of years, I was incorporating executive coaching clients' toughest struggles as I was thinking about what do these hundreds or thousands of people, hundreds or thousands, not of thousands, hundreds or thousands of people have in common when they find themselves up against a stressor or an obstacle that's preventing them from being the best communicator and the best leader, team member, spouse, parent, etc. that they can be.
oh.
And over the last 25 years, Nick, I've seen patterns. And so I'm excited now to be offering this information to the world and watching people choose one of the four hidden challenges to try to overcome if they're brave enough to sort of bring it from the peripheral vision up to the center of their
Mm.
vision and then address it. Because, of course, this is a twisty road that we're all on, and there is no getting away from the fact that we all have beautiful strengths and we all have significant weaknesses as communicators. Often our strengths, as you know, become our weaknesses because we overuse them. So it's
Uh-huh.
been really cool to see people understand and be able to identify in their own life when they are hiding from risk. And that's the first hidden challenge. The
Ah,
second is defining to be right. The third is rationalizing the negative. And the fourth is settling for good enough. And if you'd like, I could go into a little bit of detail about each of those challenges we all encounter.
I would love that if you could just give us a little bit on each one, because I'm with you. The what gets in the way of good communication is fear, and I'm delighted that you have identified four fears, because that gives us something we can sink our teeth into and talk about and wrestle with and get better at. So, tell us about these four.
Sure.
I'm loving them.
Well, we'll get better together at humaning, is what we'll do. We'll just be
Mm,
better humans. And there's
yeah.
often more we can do to improve the situation with our family, friends, or coworkers than we realize through our communication. So if we are hiding from risk, we're afraid of exposing a real or supposed weakness.
Uh-huh.
And we need to summon courage. And I go into that, of course, in the book, how we can summon courage. One way might be to get clear on your values and align with your values so you're hiding less and speaking up for others or self more. The second is defining to be right, and that's putting too much stock into our own assumptions and being just so sure that we're correct. And we
Uh-huh.
may be very much correct in our own worldview and from our life experience, but I think emotional intelligence is really gained by trying to put ourselves in others' shoes, or at least ask them what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes. So defining to be right brings us to summon courage to test assumptions.
Uh-huh.
Rationalizing the negative is choosing a pessimistic mindset, and
Ah.
it takes courage to put some time and faith into positive outcomes. I always try to visualize a positive outcome when it's important communication, and I think that's been very helpful to me in personal and professional life. I see it helping others. And the fourth is settling for good enough, and that is simply settling for your own C plus effort, a satisficing effort that can get you by when in reality you really do hope for a better outcome and could stretch for a better outcome. Once in a while, not all the time, but once in a while, we need to let go of settling for good enough and try to decide that one person, each of us, can make a difference or at least sleep better knowing that we've tried. And often we can align that with our value system, which helps us be brave. So I'm excited these days about workshopping and keynoting about the four hidden challenges applicable to I think young adults to senior citizens.
Yeah, I love those four, and particularly the last one. Well, the last two really inspire thoughts that I just love to follow up on for a second.
Yes, please.
The settling for good enough. It's fascinating to me. A pattern I see with executives that I work with is they'll say to me, "I don't need to rehearse," and that one used to puzzle me earlier in my career. Now I've been around long enough that I don't take any of that kind of you know what from executives. And I'll say, well, yeah, you don't need to rehearse. Great. But let's do it anyway. And what they're saying is, I don't want the discomfort of rehearsing um, because even in that moment, I'll look vulnerable, or even though I know it's a rehearsal, still it's putting myself out there. And of course, the result is then they get surprised when the actual performance comes. So I no longer let them off the hook there. But that is settling for good enough, because if you don't rehearse, then the surprises that you would have gotten out of the way in rehearsal are now going to trip you up in the actual performance. And the rationalizing the negative is a fascinating one to me, because I see that all the time in folks when they're standing up on stage and performing. If their mind's going to trip them up, it's because they've had a negative outcome imagined beforehand. So this is the thought that shows up, that, oh, I know I'm going to forget that bit because I always do. And
Hmm.
they imagine that, and then it happened, because if you tell your mind you're going to forget something, boy, your mind's awfully good at forgetting that thing. So that I've seen many, many times. So I love these because they inspire me to specific cases I've seen many times in rehearsal. Tell me just a little bit more about the second one, though, the being right thing, because that one that one surprised me a little. That was I wasn't expecting that, like the Spanish Inquisition. So tell me about that.
Okay, well, I think about a conversation I had with my big brother Mark about a
Mm,
personal relationship years ago. And I was just kind of laying my heart bare and telling him my worries in this relationship. And he said, you know, Michelle, your standards are so high. He said, I think you need to think about this. Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And
mm,
I thought for a minute and I said, I am right. I don't even know how to handle the question because it's really tough to give ground when you are firmly entrenched in perhaps your moral or political or workplace
mm,
values and they're being tested, right? So when I think about defining to be right, I ask people to celebrate when they have the guts to admit that their hunch or their data or their preference isn't the only way to go about things or isn't 100% correct. I
mm.
also will use with coaching clients, maybe you were misinformed, which makes me laugh a little bit because I think of being overserved at the bar. I was overserved last night, right? Well, didn't you have your hand out for that drink? But misinformed, maybe you didn't do all the homework. And we're as we see an age coming of more diverse and inclusive workplaces, I think it's
Mhm.
important to welcome the conflict that comes with healthy debate. And so I do love teaching conflict management. And that was my master's work when I was at Purdue all those
Mm.
years ago. How many years? I don't know, 25 years, but I've noticed that all those years of studying conflict and trying to help us not define to be right so often hasn't completely eliminated it from my own life or my clients' lives. It's just an ego response
Yeah,
that
sure.
we can get around it when we start to recognize when we're doing it.
Yeah, and it's such a problem these days with the polarization that began in the political world, and it's just sort of invaded
Right.
so many aspects of our lives. Is we're determined that we're right and the other side, whatever that happens to be, is wrong, and it's tragic for where we stand now. Um, Michel Gladieux, ladies and gentlemen, amazing amazing book. The four horsemen of the fear apocalypse. There, I really recommend you to find the book and to read about them and to embrace them. Those four hidden challenges, because they will change your communicating life. Michelle, thank you for being on Just One Question.
Thanks for all you do, Nick. I loved it.